Hello. This video will show you how to complete a filter action in Python. Okay, let's go ahead and get started then. So here's the Google Colab document for Module 2 Part 2, in which we talked about the filter action. The data that we're going to use is, again, the chronic disease data. This contains information on in all counties throughout the entire United States, and then also includes information on several chronic diseases. What I would like to do with my data processing steps is to perform a filter action to obtain only the counties in Minnesota or Wisconsin, and then also to perform a select action to only obtain this information here. There's additional fields in the data for the chronic disease rates across different ethnicities, but I do not want that information in my final data table. I just want the overall numbers. The last step then is to write the information out so that further analyses can be done. Okay, so here we're going to import the pandas data frame, pandas package that will allow me to work with this data. So let's go ahead and do that. Here I am reading the CSV file directly from the internet. So I'll go ahead and do that. Here I am invoking the shape method. So this chronic disease is actually a Python object, and I can invoke the shape method, which will tell me how many records and how many fields are in that data frame. So there's about 16,000 rows in that data frame and 19 columns. If I would like to look at the first 5 records, all I need to do is invoke the head method here to do that. And you can see that this is the data that we have been working with in this module. We now are going to install the dfply package, which will allow me to more easily work with this data. So we'll run those 2 cells. And now to complete the filter action. We will save this into a new data frame that has the name _ Minnesota attached to the end of it. So this will be chronic diseases in Minnesota. So I'm just doing the filter here with this statement, and I'm just going to do Minnesota first to make sure it works okay. Let's go ahead and run that, and only the data from Minnesota should be obtained here. So if we look at this information, we go to the top here, fly way up to the top, we can see that only Minnesota data is being included here. Okay, so now let's add Wisconsin. So again, I'm doing a filter. Here I'm specifying either Minnesota or Wisconsin as the state. Okay, so I'm working with that state field there, which is part of that original data frame. So here I'm just selecting the records for which state is equal to either Minnesota or Wisconsin. So again, that statement is there. And now you can see that I do indeed get information from Wisconsin and also information from Minnesota. The last step then is to select the columns that I would like to keep. And again, I can just add to the end of the statement that I had up above. This notion of doing one step and then doing a second step, and I could do another step if I would like. That notion is called piping. And these greater than allows the piping to occur inside of Python, and in particular inside of the dfply package. So here I can see that I have cleaned up my data a little bit more, and I only have the desired fields that I would like, which were just the overall rates and not the additional columns regarding the different ethnicities. I think my original data frame had 19 columns in it, and this simply has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the 19 columns. Okay, and then lastly, I can just write that out to a CSV file. So if I execute this code, that information will now be dumped over here into my CSV file. Okay, let's now work with the home healthcare example. And this example is a little bit more complex because I don't have a field designated for state in this data set. So what we're going to have to do is apply a filter action on the mailing address field and see if we can pull out the state information from that field. So this is a slightly more complicated example. We're going to go ahead and read this data in. Again, running the shape to determine how many rows and fields there or columns there are. So there's about 11,000 healthcare agencies in the United States, and there's 18 different fields being collected in this data set. Here's what those fields look like. Okay, there's many of them. If you page across, you can see all of the others there going across. All right, so as I mentioned, we're going to need to, sorry about that. There is no field for state, okay? The state information is buried within the mailing address. So here's just an example entry for the mailing address field, and this one is in Minnesota. So what I'm going to want to search for inside of that mailing address field is a comma, Minnesota, comma. So that's going to ensure that that record is in the state of Minnesota. I'm going to want to include the comma on the front and at the back of this string because I want to avoid a situation that I have presented here. So we want to make sure that Minnesota is the state and not some other part of the address. So here on this fictitious address, we have Minnesota Street. We don't want this record to be included because it is in the state of Iowa. It just happens to have MN as part of the mailing address. So when I'm searching this field here, okay, or when I'm having Python do that searching, I want to search for a comma, Minnesota, comma. Again, that will ensure that it's from the state of Minnesota. The contains function is going to allow me to do that because what I need to search for is that string, comma, Minnesota, comma, in this mailing address field. And that is done here with this filter statement. So inside of Python, I am searching for comma, Minnesota, comma, inside of the mailing address string. And that will hopefully pull out all the home healthcare agencies that are in Minnesota. And where my cursor is there, it looks like that successfully worked. The other thing that we could do is take this string and split it into 3 pieces, or even 4 pieces. It would be the address, the town, the state, and the zip code. So there is a concept of string split, which we could split that string up into its 4 components, and then we could do the filter on the state component. Here, what I've done instead is just searched that field for that state information. Lastly, we can write this out. So if we want to write that out again, healthcare, Minnesota. Over here, I will have that CSV file that will be saved. Okay. That does it then for conducting a filter action using Python. Thank you.